And I would like to invite my panelists on stage.
Yes, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we would be moving ahead to our very first session of this morning, requesting our panelists to please come forward and take your seat. And this session would be moderated by Shradha. Shradha, please take your seat. And requesting Mr. Ravi Kumar to please come forward and join us. Can we have a huge round of applause? And along with that, Mukta requesting you to please join us as well. And Mr. Prasanna requesting all of you to please join us. Let's make this session a little interactive. If you have any questions, please note it down. In the end of the session, we will definitely have a question and answer session round. Thank you so much. Over to you.
May I give you this? All right, so good morning yet again. And as you can see, I have a wonderful, esteemed panel here with me. A lot of experience. We've had some wonderful conversations, prepping. So let's see where this heads us. We know that accommodation costs are rising. We've all talked about this, over the last over the last 2 years. So in the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to discuss the changing nature of the assignment, accommodation trends that are emerging, how the employee experience is paramount, even though we're looking at cost savings and cost reductions. But we want to discuss all this. We want to bring from our panelists their experience, the stories, what they're looking at, where they see the future of business travel and mobility headed. So we're going to kickstart. I think, Mukta, I'm going to start off with you. You made a very, very interesting comment during our prep. The conventional way of doing things is changing. And the statement could not apply more than it does at the moment within global mobility, and which is something which is evolving currently, and we still don't know what it's going to look like, but it's an evolving nature of things. You also mentioned that the supply side is challenging already. So what exactly did you mean by that, and do you want to dwell a little bit more into your role at Atkins and what is happening within the mobility space right now?
Sure, Shradha, and good morning, everybody. And I think the prep sessions have itself been such an interesting time for all of us to kind of, engage and try and understand that when we are in our day-to-day work, we feel some of our challenges are unique. But when we talk to our industry colleagues, we say, okay, we're all in the same boat and we're all struggling and we're all trying to find what's the best next way to support our businesses, right? And some of the stats that you shared in terms of how the outbound business is more for India, right? The other part of it is that even for global mobility, typically as the function, you would find that the shared services are mostly supported through India and that's how the moves that our teams support today are not necessarily only inbound India or in one direction, but the geographical footprint to which our teams end up supporting international moves is global at this point in time. I mean, just giving an example from my role here in Atkins, I'm the director for shared services here at AtkinsRéalis, and been a year into that role, but the biggest interesting piece for me here is the industry sector and the nature with which how the assignment moves for an engineering services company versus, the financial businesses experience that I had earlier, or the IT or tech business, that the way they model their global mobility programs. And that's where it's important to try and understand that, especially an engineering services business which works on very smaller margins compared to the IT industry, how do you really ensure that the business is able to manage their costs? It's the same talent pool. The need is to move resources. This is an industry which has a multi-generational population that needs to move. So the expectation of how they get supported when they have international assignments, there's an expectation of all kinds. You need the white-gloved support services where somebody wants them to handle to every step, whereas we have the generation where it says, can I just know everything about my assignment at a click of a button? Is there a portal I can go check onto? Can I get my updates in my mobile handset? So to try and meet expectations of all these employees is our biggest challenge today. And we cannot afford not to do either, right? Especially in the accommodation side, I think so, Shradha, as we discussed earlier, I think the biggest challenge is to say how to prep your assignee, even what to expect in the housing markets, right? In the locations that they go to. The assignee is really very excited to go on an assignment. And we've had some younger assignees struggle with the expectation of what they end up in a housing, because Bangalore, they're used to a nice, good place here, and when they land up in an assignment in UK, they still get a 2-bedroom, but the 2-bedroom of Bangalore and a 2-bedroom of Birmingham is very, very different, right? So getting them to prepare, helping them with a technology platform that helps them prepare and adapt to it before they land there would just help us ensure that, they settle quickly, they get on with their job quickly. So I think there's a business benefit to look at managing this better. And so those are some of our drivers where we now realize that, we have to get on to different ways of managing these expectations, just different ways of ensuring that we make information accessible as early as possible. So I think that's where our line of thinking is going in terms of where do we help business, help their employees settle quickly into the assignment locations. So that's where we are driving.
So the sensitization of the employee is extremely important, as you say.
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. No, absolutely. I think we take that feedback and you'll see a product demo later where we show you how exactly we do this as well. Prasanna, moving on to you, you had mentioned during our chats that the costs are quite alarming at the moment. And of course, you're looking at a very large segment of the program. You're looking at immigration across various countries. I mean, I'd love to hear, or we'd all love to hear a little bit more about what you do at Infosys. And especially, I think you mentioned there are many factors at play here. There's geopolitics, there's lots going on. So if you want to dwell a little bit into what you're doing at Infosys.
Yeah, thank you first of all. Good morning everyone. Thank you Shradha and Carolina for getting us here and being here part of the panel. About myself, into my second decade, into the 20th year of global immigration for the company and 20th year with the company too. So I head inbound, outbound to Europe and Asia Pacific and the Middle East countries at this point in time, and it's very different from what she said. Being within IT also, it's a little different one where accommodation is not yet part of the global mobility piece that I handle. But on the topics that you're asking about, there are 4 things I would probably first think of. One is the 4 different C's. I would see it from an Indian perspective, somebody who's going outbound from here, right? First is curiosity. The Indians are generally curious. They want to know about anything and everything about things happening around them. And they want to be quite curious in knowing what's happening around the world. Is it them or not? It doesn't matter. That's one. 2 is the repeat travelers are getting more choosy. If not the first time travelers, the repeat travelers are quite knowledgeable. They get quite choosy. So whatever she said, 2-bedroom house in India is different from 2-bedroom house in Bangalore, in Mumbai, to a 2-bedroom house in London or Birmingham. So choosy, they're getting more choosy. It's not only the house. It's not only the house that they stay, right? It's also about what do you get along with the house. The utilities. In India, we're not used to a warmer or a cooler or whatever that you call it. ACs are more, but in the western part of the world, it's not. So what are the utilities that somebody will get along? What is the cost associated? How do they balance that? Because accommodation is not only house. It also comes along with the package. So that's the next one, right? They are becoming choosy. They want to know more information about tying to the curiosity part. And the diaspora is bigger than earlier now. It can be IT, it can be mechanical, it can be engineering, or banking for that matter. The diaspora is growing bigger. So the choosiness also comes from there. They have access to more information. Third is culture. There is a huge difference in culture from what they see here in India and what they see outside. You cannot have a tadka that you can make at home here to what you can do in certain places. It's not something that comes along. So it's also about, while the program can talk about how can a partner like you bring in more help or get in a house or getting a viewing of houses, it's also about the culture. So if there is some more education on the culture part, then it will make it more easier for them. And that makes it less choosier. The earlier point also, right? The more they know about the country that they're getting into or the city that they're getting into, I think the culture part will get balanced itself. Fourth, of course, is the biggest one, the cost. Everyone would want to, as a company or as an individual, when somebody has a house here or a setup here, and when they go out of the country from here, they would also want to carry back some value. One, it's value to the career. They learn new culture. They get experience. They also want to get back something back, and that in today's world is money, right? For them be able to get some investments back here. Are they going to come back to India or not? Doesn't matter. But are there investments everywhere in the world? Dubai market is opening up, so I see a lot of people investing in Dubai than just investing here today. So that's the 4 C's that will come into play. On the geopolitics thing, yes, I'm very small that way to talk about it because at World Economic Forum, geopolitics is one of the biggest topics that all the leaders have spoken about, right? Just two things, if not more. The two wars that are happening today, is ceasefire or is it slowdown, doesn't matter. It does cost because it's a matter of safety. Wherever you go, does it reflect elsewhere? People support both sides in different parts of the world. So how safe is the city or how safe is the locality that I'm going to be in, and how safe is it from a housing point of view? How accessible is it for my children to go to school? How accessible is it for us to get into a supermarket or to get my daily needs is a bigger question. How does the other one do? Funding to the wars on both sides, or how would you equip? It does affect the market. A lot of companies have slowed down, a lot of movements have come down. And how is it going to change? Nobody knows how's it going to be 2 years down the line. So the word of caution is always there on the mind. The next biggest thing, of course, including India and the US, the elections that are going to happen, about 64 countries or more what I'm reading. Elections are coming up, and how does it change? How are people going to see it when they are going to a new country? Long term, short term, the business travelers, they don't worry too much. All their biggest worries is accessibility to the client's place and a proper food. If I can get my cuisine, that's more than enough for them, right?
True.
But yeah, the elections is going to play a role in the people who go on a long-term move. So
and how that settles down. I think over 60% of the world is going into elections this year, right?
Yeah,
it's a big year for us.
The population I read is going to vote this year.
Absolutely. So what I gather is safety is something which is very important when you're looking at accommodation. It's also about the location, the proximity, etc., which is extremely important. All right, interesting. Ravi, moving on to you, I think when we spoke, you mentioned something about changing expectations, and I know you're looking or you're re-looking at the mobility program at Maersk, and I know you mentioned that there is a bit of restructuring that is underway, whether it's looking at cost, whether it is looking at how you onboard vendors, whether it is looking at what exactly is needed. So I think you made a very, very interesting comment there, and I still remember that. You said we're looking at making costs more predictable. And I know at the same time we just spoke about geopolitics and whereas it's not predictable. So how are you looking at things? And I think how is it that you're looking at partners and vendors who are nimble? That's what you'd mentioned.
Yeah. Maersk is in the business of logistics. Am I audible?
Is it audible? Okay.
Maersk is in the business of logistics. We move close to 1/4 of world's cargo. We're present in almost all the countries in the world. That automatically says you're exposed to everything that happens anywhere in the world.
True.
Be it a recession in some part of the world, be it a drop in consumer demand. All of that directly reflects on our bottom line, right? And that therefore then trickles down into every part of the business, including mobility in a way. Now, for the amount of people movements that we have in a year, will say a 50% or even 100% increase in accommodation cost in a particular location, will it stop us from sending our folks? Maybe not, right? What will is if we know this in advance, right? If we know this when we are going to make the decision, saying, hey, we have this bunch of 10 people planning to move to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a classic case that we went through last year. And we realized the prices had shot up more than 100%. So where we were paying X, we are paying 2X or more than 2X. Now, there is no way you're going to say, hey, no, let's not do this or let's bring the people back because accommodation got expensive. But if you know this well in advance, right, when the business is planning for say moving people into a particular location and you have these things already in place. Usually the data updates happen 6 months, once in 6 months, once in a year. But if you have that real-time data, it allows you to see how much is it changing my total cost by. And does that then tip over the decision-making point, saying, okay, this is too much for us to deal with right now, maybe we hold on to it. Predictability gives you the ability to actually manage at that level. And not just Maersk, I think a lot of companies around the world are bracing for an impact with what's coming in 24. A lot of economists are skeptical about. It's working? Okay. Are skeptical about the outlook. So cost is a very big factor, but how it plays out in business decisions, in mobility decisions actually varies. For a company like us, it may not be the definite tipping point, but of course, if you have visibility well in advance, you can make better decisions.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Mukta, I'm going to jump on to the topic that we talked at length about, and I think this is something Ravi and you and I spoke about. We talked about the need for digital solutions and what part of the mobility or the business travel process can be digitized and what part makes sense and how it, which part is, or let's say how much of human touch is required and what part can be taken away by technology. Is this something that impacts your decision making when you're choosing your vendors and your supplier network? And I remember you mentioned during our chats that something about integration is important, right, into the systems that you're working in. So do you want to talk a little bit about the need for the digital solutions and what is it that you're looking at currently in Atkins?
Sure, Shradha. And I think for all of us, the operational efficiency is one buzzword that I think all of us need to live by. That's something that we need to look into on a daily basis in terms of where can we build in efficiencies in our programs, right? That's the need of the business, that's the need of our programs in any case. We're looking at options of where you need to simplify things, where you need to standardize things, and yeah, where you need to digitize, automate solutions and look at that as an option. Is it necessarily just a cost-saving mechanism? No, it's not that, because I think employee experience is now sitting at the center of everything as well, and from that perspective, automation or digital solutions are becoming a first reference check to see what's available, what's possible. But yeah, that comes with a cost as well, because IT projects and IT investments have their own cost component that you need to build into your programs, right? Which are not necessarily, when we say a global mobility program, is not just about what you're offering to the assignees as part of your benefits packages or that part, but it's also about how you're extending that and what's the support that they're going to get under. So from a program delivery perspective for us, it becomes really important to look at where we can look at these kinds of solutions. On the vendor side of it, I think, yes, we still quite operate on the conventional mechanisms of having DSP service providers and tax service providers and global mobility. By nature of it, we have a multiple vendor footprint in terms of how we operate because we don't have the single providers of immigration, tax, and that kind of a services. So it's either way a very complex mechanism of managing so many vendors and expecting the same kind of vendor integrations in technology platforms that we are using to deliver our assignment programs, right? So today, we are definitely in conversations with our current vendors to see where we can build APIs, where we can look at technology solutions, because again, coming back to the operational efficiency side of it, there's my team that I need to look at who is supporting all these assignees, and if it means that they need to log into 3 or 4 systems to help deliver their day-to-day work, it's not the best way for them to manage their work. So if I'm using a single platform, I would want my extended vendor partners to be able to help engage and join us on those platforms, and that's why it's equally important for us to have vendors who are digitally savvy as well, or have a roadmap of a digital journey that they're embarking on, for which we can be partnering with them as well. So I think that becomes really, really important for us from our own shared service delivery aspect, from an employee experience perspective aspect, and yes, I mean, at the end of the day, then the efficiency gains that you gain by moving on a technology platform. So I think that's our outlook today. And whenever we're now looking at a new vendor, we roll it out an RFP. I think the questions on the RFP have definitely changed, where some of the questions on whether you have digital platforms available are now becoming primary focus questions on an RFP. I'm sure you would have experienced some of that as you go along. So
I think you'd also mentioned a lot of your foray into the Middle East, and I think how there are new kinds of accommodations that you're looking at. I think we spoke about whether you want a blue porter cabin or a red porter cabin. I remember that conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, because by this, I mean, our assignees are not necessarily going into locations which are big cities, right? I mean, these are engineers who are going to have to go and work at sites. I mean, in the Middle East, we are one of the design partners for the NEOM project. So our engineers would be sitting at the Riyadh office, but some of them would be at the site as well, where construction is going through. And yeah, I mean, that the option there is, like we said, a blue porter cabin or a green porter cabin. That's the only option. But that's exactly where as a program we need to evolve to kind of be an employee champion at that point in time, to also see that, okay, 3 weeks there, then that's a hardship location. What is it that we're going to offer them to bring them back into a city location the 1 week that they're... So the way we offer accommodation support itself is having to be modeled a little differently. And we need to understand how that works, right? But it's also in geographies where our employees would need to be going, is changing. Today, you know, clean energy is becoming so important that with everything else, we're seeing an uptake on the nuclear energy programs going up. We today own the patent for the CANDO technology in Quebec, and which is supported by the Canadian government. So we're seeing some of our nuclear projects gaining traction. But again, a nuclear site doesn't get built near the city, right? That would mean that that's going to be at a remote location. Can we really have accommodation support where something like that can be provided to our employees, right? It's either way a high stress environment. Can accommodation be an area where they can, something that can be provided as a relief to them through the high stress environment that they either way work in? So I think the whole conversation about how some of this gets supplemented, not as a functional aspect of a place to live versus looking at it as being a whole part of the life that they're going to live while they're on an assignment, I think those conversations are changing. We're having to educate our business a lot on that, because for a business manager, like Ravi said, it is about costs and saying, hey, but just doing this increases my cost by 20%, 30%. Or when you present a cost estimate, accommodation is one of the highest components on that. And then they start worrying on why are we spending so much, not understanding how the market is out there, right? We're trying to move a resource to Egypt. Business took some time in terms of finalizing the whole thing. The cost estimate that we gave them 3 months ago does not hold valid anymore. I mean, the inflation that Egypt is experiencing, the currency devaluation, there are completely different components that are impacting that, right? But you have to brief your business manager to help them understand your cost is now going to be about 80% higher only because accommodation has gone up, right? So it's those kinds of conversations where I think we are having to change our conversations with our business managers as well. And a tool like this would help us. Again, predictive information helps us. So I think technology is something that we want to rely on to be able to have more valuable and relatable conversations with our business.
So what I'm hearing is accommodation partner is extremely important.
True. You got that right.
All right. And Ravi, back to you again. How much does technology play a role within your mobility programs?
I think it's something that almost all companies are looking at very seriously. Most of the mobility policies, platforms, systems that we put in place for companies who've been in business, multinational business, they've seen this in the past. But I don't think it's evolved as fast as how mobility has evolved.
Okay.
I go back to what you were saying about the boom that we talk about in mobility. Nothing changed actually, right? Nothing changed except we had a pandemic, which was a worldwide medical emergency. How does that change how people look at mobility? But that is also the time when we saw a lot of remote work come into play.
Sure.
We saw a lot of people who were not able to travel had to live and work from different locations. And then the focus came back onto people working from locations away from their home or back at their home. And then when you put all of this into perspective of where your mobility design or your policies or your processes stand, are we really with the times, or are we still catching up? I think a lot of the industry is still catching up. There are a lot of good technology-backed products that are in the market right now. But going back, unless they all kind of snap fit into each other and are able to deliver the value that each one of them individually brings, like just the predictability on, say, accommodation cost is not going to help so much. Like I said, it has to come together, then it has to add to the business decision, and then you will start seeing value. So there is no doubt that as we go along, the need for technology in mobility is going to increase. How the products are designed today and how they fit into each other is going to change. I don't know if it will be overstating, but maybe there will be a need for things to actually start working together, because when you look at some of these systems that work independently, it is quite frustrating. It's like,
No, fair
why
enough.
can't these things, why can't this charger go into this phone? Like, as simple as that, right? So it's not just about bringing in solutions that are value adding in themselves, but also when you add them together, what more can they bring to you?
Absolutely.
I think that's where.
No, we
that's
get
where
asked this question all the time. Can you integrate with this technology? So we're like, of course we can. We're a proprietary technology, so hence we're here for the API integration as well, provided that both parties want to enter into that. But of course, I mean, that is the need of the hour, no doubt about that. Prasanna, we'd had a very interesting conversation regarding the Gartner report, and we talked a little bit about the importance of that employee experience. Of course, we've spoken about cost throughout the morning, but it can't be at the cost of that employee experience.
Absolutely.
And there was something very interesting you said. You said that there was an emerging trend that came out that employees prefer the work-life balance even to a higher pay, for example. So it's very important, for instance, where you're staying, what the environment is like, the nature of, if you're able to take your family with you for a short-term assignment or not. Yes. And, what is it that the company is able to offer you? So what is it that you are experiencing right now within Infosys?
So, the Gartner report talks about the trends that are coming up into 2024, the working trends in 2024, and one of them is about 4 days working week, right? Now, many employers are talking about 4 days, and are they going to do? It's at a very nascent stage. But if that's going to be a reality, or the companies which are going to test it, people are forced, the assignees are forced to stay 3 days with the family, unlike the 2 days today, right? So they would probably need a house which is better. They need other arrangements around the house also, wherever they live around the property, which also engages the family enough. And yes, I did read the fact that people are ready to forego their progress in their career if it brings them a work-life balance and stuff like that, and if it's all the more when they're outside. So from my view, picking up from what she said, right, the remote locations, the new locations, where not the established markets or not the established economies, there are new economies that are coming up. So when people go to an unknown territory, and where the knowledge of the area is lesser to them from whatever is available on the internet or whatever sources they have, they would rely on partners like you, because they would rely that you will bring them the safety. They would also think that you do all the readings for your clients already before, and you do bring in that knowledge to tell them that, look, from here the transport is so much, the safety aspect is this much, and you would get everything within your 2 kilometers access or whatever. So the importance, not limited to only my industry, we are seeing this across the industry also, that when people go into newer territories now, and the stays are becoming more unpredictable these days, it becomes all the more important to give more time to research. And the expectation is that any service provider, it's not the accommodation service provider, it could be a mobility service provider, it could be somebody like who moves the goods. The knowledge of the destination is more important, and that is what they would anticipate. So accommodation, like I said in the earlier note, accommodation doesn't stop with only the house today. So it's a larger
it's a larger ecosystem.
It's a larger
Absolutely.
ecosystem, and that makes it more important for people to be knowledgeable before they get into a country.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
If I could just add to what Prasanna was saying, from a global mobility program perspective, where does this impact, if I really have to look at it as what kind of housing is available, does decide me to decide on whether I'm going to give them the shipment or not. Right?
That's true.
Whether I'm going to give them a furniture allowance to rent a furniture or not. So we cannot look at anything in isolation in mobility. That's the best part of it, right?
You can't actually.
And things like that makes a lot of difference to say, okay, this kind of housing is available. So this is the kind of benefit package we need to offer to the employee, which is going to make the employee experience, better, which is going to encourage our talent to accept assignments that we want them to, so that because we're able to assure them a good work-life balance. So I think, in mobility, we typically cannot look at anything in isolation. We really have to look at what does it mean from an entire offering perspective that you're providing in that. So for us, accommodation doesn't become a decision in isolation, but it kind of then centers around what's exactly getting offered and on the program itself to that employee. So that becomes important to us. And that's something that if you're able to get that information up front through a portal on what kind of housing is available, what can be provided, it helps us package that benefit offering to the employees in a better way or in a different way. So those are the kind of things that we need to
So
really
maybe
think
what's not changing is the assignment type is not changing.
Exactly.
That remains, like as Ravi is saying. What's changing is the amount of information that's desired, right? We have a much more knowledgeable assignee that's moving, or a business traveler, and I think that's what's required. So I mean, when it comes to my last question to all of you is, what are you guys seeing as trends that are emerging? If there, let's say, any one or top 2 trends that are emerging within either global mobility or business travel with respect to service departments, corporate accommodation, like anything that you're noticing?
Like whatever I said earlier, people who go on shorter trips are more worried about the 2 weeks or 3 weeks transport and the food. So if it is accessible, if both of these are accessible, and if it's a place where they could get to the cuisine that they used to, they're not worried beyond. But for the people who stay longer, when I say longer, anything beyond a year and a half or more, the priorities are different. Knowledge is more important for them, and the longevity of the stay and how comfortable are they. They do not, nobody wants to carry accommodation or getting settled into the country at the back of their minds, because they get onto there for their projects or a client project or a company project. So they expect things to be served on a plate. Of course, it's not easy to meet everybody's expectation, including the cost part. But if there is predictability, like whatever she said and whatever he was also talking about, I think that would help. Everybody wants predictability. It's not expenses would go up. It would go up. There is inflation across the world, and there is cost of living is going up. But if there is predictable, and how early can they get? The biggest challenge that we're seeing across the world today, right? Viewings are all not even available up to 6 weeks. For long-term stayers, viewing an apartment is more important. And as a person who's been a assignee in London in the past, I would prefer seeing the place to know who my neighbor is. Are there people who I know? Are there people who are similar to my family here and stuff like that? So with that kind of stuff, viewing not being available is a bigger worry, and people do get to know about it before even they go. So predictability on cost, availability, whatever you want to say, predictability is going to be the biggest one, is what I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, simply picking up from what Prasanna said, right? I think the nature of support that businesses are willing to provide, the kind of flexibility that the employees are expecting also when they're on assignments. There was a trend where employees would just say, give me the allowance, I'll manage everything on my own. To now they realize that, no, it's not so easy to do that on their own. They would want that assistance, right? So they do expect that the company provides them the guidance, or provides them the information, even if they're expected to do. From a company perspective, do we really want our employees to take the risk of signing up lease agreements in a market that they do not understand the fine print of it? Maybe not, you know.
Safety,
so we really want to be very sure of, does it really make sense going into corporate lease, programs? Well, that's a huge burden, administrative burden on the corporate, not something we would want to take on. So we would want a service provider who would kind of ensure that they're looking at the, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and helping and ensuring that the employee is compliant as well, because we cannot have non-compliance happening in an onshore location as well. So there are a lot of that kind of component as well that we would, we think needs to be thought through. One is physical security, but the other is also the compliance, and that aspect that I think is gaining prominence for us. And I think we would also want to de-risk that for our employees, So one is flexibility of just providing a cash allowance and saying manage on your own, versus providing that assisted or supported programs where you can say, okay, still make a choice of where you want to go and live, but you still need to go through a vendor partner that we've identified who we know would have run the assessments. So, we kind of de-risk that for the company. So I think some of these conversations are also equally coming up and becoming important for us as an organization. And I think, as a trend, yes, the trend is primarily to look at the quality of living as well. So, one of the data sets that we're starting looking at, we would look at the COLA data that we would want from the market. I think the call data is equally becoming important, right? The quality of living parameters are equally important to be built for us to review. So I think these aspects are definitely something that are gaining focus.
Okay, lovely. Ravi?
In terms of trends, I'll put it a little differently. I think there is a twofold change that I see coming. One, in terms of how businesses are going to look at mobility and what will be the primary form of moving people, or the primary amount of time that you want to move people. And two is what kind of expectations people are coming with, right? We've heard requests that do you have shared accommodation, right?
Okay.
And we've been told no by our service provider. We don't have shared accommodation. You'll have to book individual hotels. So it will change on both sides, and it will be more driven by the realities of the business, right? There will be a need for us to move people in, say, in bulk, and maybe the situation is not as great as it is today. Costs are a lot more important to manage. So, of course, trends will change. Of course, the option of the fact that we have these options right now will definitely push the business to think slightly differently. And again, the needs of the business based on business realities will push the service providers to come up with new things. So there will definitely be a lot of change. There will be a lot of new products, services that will come up. And then it'll be about how you bring both
integrations.
Bring both of them together and
Like
try and
buzzword.
solve for the real business problems, right?
True, true, absolutely.
Yeah, on the integration part, I mean, I don't even remember when I checked my Yahoo email on a browser. We're all tuned
all on
onto
the
our
phone.
apps, right? So
Yeah.
it becomes all the more important. Everybody wants to see it on the phone or an app. So new things are going to emerge, including technology, new requirements are going to emerge. It's always an evolving one. It's a cyclic stuff, right? But what is not cyclic is we need a place to stay. So, which is, we are in the right business at this point in time.
No, absolutely, absolutely. No, thank you so very much for this brilliant and insightful conversation. So, a very big round of applause for my wonderful panel. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. And I hope it was great. Any questions from the audience?
So, all right. Any questions? The mic would be handed over. Looks like we have a question there.
Padmaja. The mic's coming to you. The mic's coming to you.
Hi, Mukta, this is a question for you. And this is something that we are struggling at as well. You mentioned that it's so important to help assignees settle before they actually move locations, right?
Yes.
Do you have any insights on how do you really do it? Are there any programs that you run or anything that you do at your organization to help assignees settle before they go in?
We do, but I'm sure there is a need to do more because that's what something that we're also realizing is needed more. But yeah, I mean, it starts with basically, I would say, a global mobility partner actually having a conversation. We do tend to push out again, that's the other side of automation, right? We do tend to push out a lot of information through emailers and decks and packs and everything for them, expecting that they're going to read through this and get themselves ready. But I think so it is about sitting down and having that conversation to say, have you understood everything? Do you need more information? Ensuring that they've connected with their host manager, build that relationship over there, So it goes beyond just saying that, we'll deliver the global mobility program, but kind of helping them understand what they need to keep themselves prepped up for, and just have that one-to-one conversation. So I think we're changing our patterns about moving everything from e-based information sharing to having at least one touch point, personal touch point from a mobility partner to an employee, because I think that's the conversation that makes a lot of difference to say, have you thought through this? Do you need more support? And remember, I'm your point of contact if you need something. So, there's that fine balance of have you given enough information versus have you made yourself available as a support to that assignee. So I think that's where we're shifting a bit to bring in that personal touch on the support side for assignees.
Very interesting. And I think one of the things that, and I'm happy to share here, one of the things that we already do this at the Unilever, but one of the things that we're trying to do, which might be insightful as well, is we're trying to see if we can have a buddy for the assignee just before they land. Yeah. Somebody who has traveled to the same location, somebody who has been there, could answer questions like, where do I go and buy my bread early in the morning the day I land? Right? That's something I think is a value add maybe. And I was looking if there's something else that the audience has to share, if there is something similar that you do. Because this, I think, is a very big question in everybody's mind these days. At least at Unilever, across all the GMMs that we talk about, this is a very big problem.
True.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm going to just make you pause for one picture together.
Thank you so much. Give a huge round of applause to our first panel, ladies and gentlemen. We'll take one picture and then we would move ahead. An interesting
Thank
and
you.
insightful session
Thank you
early
so
in the
much.
morning.
Thank
Thank you so much
you.
for joining us.